Hello, my name is Chloe Whittemore, and this is my stratification and inequality presentation. So I took a few photos illustrating a really acute version of social inequality. This photo I took when I was on the way to my volunteer facility, and it's not in the best area. And I saw a man who I assume to be homeless carrying a big bag of aluminum cans. Um, I'm assuming he's, collecting them to turn them in for quick cash, which is pretty sad. Um, the next photo, I didn't take this one, but I've driven by it a few times, and it's called The Zone in downtown Phoenix, and it's actually one of the largest homeless encampments in, I believe, the nation, but definitely the biggest in Arizona, and it's around 1,000 people. And this is just heartbreaking that these people are subjected to living in squalor and not exposed to the same opportunities, that we are. And then the next two are some homes in my parents' neighborhood in Arcadia. I believe they each sold for north of 3 million. So it is a very big economic gap, as you can see between the last two photos and these two. And, we can't assume their backgrounds, the homeowners' backgrounds, that this was just handed to them, but it's still kind of shocking that people in this day and age are still living on the street with limited resources and necessities such as food and water and housing and everything. This is not only an example of economic inequality, but it's also an example of the inequality of opportunity, basic health care, shared equality in the areas of nation, faith, and family, those opportunities. This affects status and environment, who they're around and what they're around, and wage inequality, of course. So those are some really sad examples. Um, the class system in America. So there are economic and behavioral classes. The economic is, of course, the income and wealth, occupation, and educational level that creates economic commonality, a distinct economic class that's comprised of the same individuals who share these traits. Behavioral and social, it's a little different. It's more lifestyle oriented. So similar tastes in food, music, activities, and general social behavior. The drawbacks of this class system include the maldistribution of wealth, of course, where some families are unable to afford much more than their house and a car, and some unable to afford necessities such as food. Further, minorities or marginalized groups may not be able to reap the social, medical, economic, or psychological benefits of a higher social class. The benefits of our class system is that we have a relatively open system. Americans have, in theory, more opportunities to access the resources needed to attain social mobility or advancements that other countries don't have. Some examples that come to mind are Mexico or China, even South America. And further, another benefit is that we need workers from all class levels, all levels in America to make our society run the way that we're used to. We need public service people or workers from the top 1%, which could include doctors or investors or, you know, um, Forbes business owners, Um, and then I don't want to be cliche, but we also need like lower class workers such as janitors and fast food workers. And um, we need everyone, in their certain classes to contribute to society. How social roles and status impact social inequality. Class affects whether someone is going to be accepted into a certain kind of school, their education, and their likelihood of prospering in that school, the kinds of jobs they have exposure to, the kinds of friends they make, and the people they're around. And it just generally comprises of the level of status, power, and benefits people either enjoy or they lack. And status, social, and economic inequality heavily affects areas like mortality and health outcomes. There's a growing need for the study of this so we can further, figure out how to prevent this acute inequality. And one of these reasons is the growing gap in social and economic inequality, which has detrimental consequences, including stereotypes, prejudice, relationships, self image, and health. And then the social institution that I chose is the education system. So, given that schools are intended to, be based solely off of merit, where accomplishment is determined by aptitude and effort rather than advantages provided by class background, the notion that social class inequalities are reinforced in the education system is surprising and concerning. It is suggested that by encouraging norms and values that are more recognizable to children from middle class homes, the educational system reproduces socioeconomic inequities. The meritocratic idea that such performance gaps are caused by differences in aptitude or effort will serve to explain and legitimize unequal performance to the extent that aids middle class children in outperforming their working class classmates. One theoretical model that perpetuates inequality is the model of contextualism and solipsism. Contextualism is the psychological orientation of the lower class, which is driven mainly by the need to deal with external restraints and threats. And solipsism is the upper class's orientation driven by inward states like emotion and individual goals. This reminds me of, the American dream, how most, some people believe that it's everything that you earn in your life is based off of your own merit and your drive and everything. And we know that this is not necessarily true. But unfortunately, the premise of this perspective is that lower class environments have greater levels of inherent threat, which are reflected in the lack of security in terms of employment, housing, personal safety, and health. And then measures to help alleviate inequality in education. So, first, it's necessary to plot a clear strategy to improve the education experience for all students and narrow this inequality gap. We need to hold equally rigorous standards for all classrooms and put a focus on teachers as the central force for change in the education system. Equalize the share of resources among all school systems and pay special attention to at-risk schools or students and students in these districts to monitor and ensure major progress. So, a PISA study in 2015 notes that the countries whose educational systems offered students the best outcomes and the least indication of inequality had instituted clear, carefully thought out strategies with reduction of inequality in mind. And with these policies in mind, policymakers in the US can make great strides in building an equitable education system for all of the country's students and subsequently build a stronger society in the process because kids are our future, and that is extremely necessary. And these are my references. Thank you for listening.